Welcome to yet another special edition of Sports Extraordinary Weekend Edition here on Atlantic Television Network. This weekend promises to be very thrilling because the Australian Open is on showcase already with us this weekend. And this is the weekend where the 35th edition of the African Cup of Nations comes to an end in Rabat, Morocco. We'll take a look at who can emerge as champions. Will it be the Atlas Lions of Morocco, or it will be Teranga Lions of Senegal? And when we return from the break, there's a lot more beyond tennis and football. Stay with us. But we'll take a look at some domestic football as well and European football. Yes, the Premier League is back into its 21st match day here in Nigeria. And of course, across in England, Arsenal are maintaining a 7-point lead at the top of the Premiership. You look at that, maybe some little development coming from the La Liga and the Italian Serie A ahead of the UEFA Champions League coming up this week, or do I say next week? First, let me introduce my guest, and I have with me in the studio Mike. Nice to have you, Mike.
Thanks for having me on this weekend edition of Sport Extraordinaries, and it promises to be a massive weekend where, of course, the AFCON final will be in showcase, plus the USA Open, which just get underway.
Well, let's get across to China Chiru. China Chiru, of course, the sports storyteller, one of the South, and of course, Nigeria's in-depth sports journalist. China, nice to have you on this edition of the program.
Good afternoon, sir. Good to be on you.
Okay, let's get started. First, we'll start in tennis. The Australian Grand Open is here. This is the very first tennis Grand Slam, China. And already we are beginning to have some interesting development across from Melbourne. First, it was a ball girl that collapsed due to heat conditions in the match where we saw in one of the first games involved in the women category. What can the organizers do, especially with several complaints about heat conditions by this time of the year in Australia?
Really, listen, it's a recurring decimal for the Australia Open. We know about the heat waves in Australia. We know about the forest fires. A lot happens at this time in Australia. Now, what can they do apart from moving the games to a more favorable month? They can somehow create cooler temperatures by having water breaks, probably water bottles around, maybe a cooling room for people to sit back and relax. These are things that they could do, artificial measures. But there's really nothing they can do about the weather or the games itself, except of course they want to move it to a more favorable month. So listen, no surprise about the collapse and other heat bonds that happen in Australia. It comes with the territory and the time of the year.
32 degrees heat Fahrenheit is really, really hot. And China still looking at with the Australian Open this weekend. One of the favorite names when it comes to tennis. Legendary Venus Williams have crashed out on the very first round at the Australian Open. She was given a wild card, over 40 years of age, but still very interested and passionate about tennis.
Yeah, and the one thing I've learned with sports people, especially since I started following sports many years ago, is that they hardly know when it's time to quit. Well, sometimes because it's their passion, they want to keep doing it until they can do it no more. For others, they really don't understand that. Listen, my mind is telling me this, but my body is giving me different signals. That's why, like in football, for example, a player can be playing for AC Milan today, Arsenal tomorrow, to the Australian League the next year, as well as trained leagues. So same as this tennis player, they are sport people. All she knows how to do is to play tennis. And she moved from winning Grand Slams to get to the Grand Slam finals, to not even qualifying for the quarterfinals, now get knocked out in the first round. Listen, it's going to happen until that point she says, let me stop this and move on to something else in my life. So no surprises from Venezuela now.
There was rumor that the younger sister was going to come back. She has said she's not coming back, but it looks like the rumors became stronger by the day.
You see, there are always rumors, right? As long as you're a great personality in whatever field you're in, there's always a rumor that you're going to be part of the next activity. And one thing that leads to these rumors is silence from the actors. Now, if Serena had maybe called the press conference a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 weeks ago to say, I will be at the Australian Open, or I won't be, I'm resting, or whatever she said at the press conference, then this won't happen. But because there's lack of information, we as the media, we begin to imagine our own information and put it out there as fact. Meanwhile, it's not. So, listen, Serena never made an official statement on her availability or participation at the Australian Open, and that's why it's happening. For me, it's normal in the game.
Okay. Mike, I'll get to talk to you now. Let's look still with the Australian Open. Alexander Zverev was almost going to be knocked out. He lost the first set.
Yeah, I think it was, a battle of, trying to survive. After losing that first set to, Diallo, I was thinking maybe the world number 3 is going to lose that particular one. But then I think experience helped him a lot because after losing that first set, he went back and in the second set, he was able to put himself together. He would have been an embarrassing outing for the world number 3 if he had lost to such a white card entrant in the person of Diallo. But then I just hope that as the tournament progresses, maybe he's going to get stable and begin to dish out some of those impressive stuff that we know of him.
Well, talking about the tournament progressing, this is just the first day of the tournament and a lot more to come in the next 10 days or thereabout. Are you expecting any surprises, shock as we've seen? Yes, the big name players could recover, but then are you expecting any surprise at this year's Australian Open? Of course, Yannick Sinner is struggling. He's saying he has to. Then Carlos He's never won the Australian Open before. Are you expecting any surprise from what we know before?
From the look of things, if you take a look at in the WTA, you see the regular names are there, which for me, I don't expect to see any surprise. Talking about Aina Zabalenka that I've been informed, she had a very impressive year of 2025 stroke 2026. You talk about Iga Swiatek, another very fine player. Kori Kokogov, Amanda Anasimova. These are the three players in the WTA that I don't think I'm going to see any surprise. And for me, it's going to take an maybe extraordinary exception from other players to be able to give these four names that I've just mentioned a run for their money. Then you talk about the ATP. The regular favorites, you talk about Carlos Alcaraz, the youngest Spaniard, Yannick Sinner, of course, Alexander and Zverev, and Novak Djokovic. These four names, for me, I don't see any other players that might just, upstage these four names that I've just mentioned. So, to cut it short, I don't think that we are going to see any upset or any shocker in this year's edition of the Australian Open.
Okay, the Australian Open is just starting, and we'll keep you posted with developments across from what happens on and off the courts, how the star players react. We'll look at them both for the male and the female. But the major upset well, it's not an upset to me, is that Venus Williams, a very well-known name in tennis, has crashed out, even in spite of the fact that she was given white card. A lot of people look at white cards being given to some of these players, yes. White card entrants, have they really surprised the tennis world? China, maybe we'll just wrap up on that. Have you been surprised by any white card before in tennis?
Listen, white cards are given because people have a reputation. Maybe on your current form, you may not be good enough to make it onto the qualifiers, but based on reputation, they see you as a good draw. Maybe a crowd puller, maybe someone that can pull a surprise, and you get a wild card. Listen, in a few times, or maybe an underdog with prospects, maybe a young player with prospects, and we need a wild card entry. Listen, it all depends on your form on the day. If luck is on your side, and the forces work for you, then you can go as far as possible.
Okay, now let's get back to tennis. You get away from tennis and look at football. The 35th edition of the African Cup of Nations is coming to an end today in Rabat, Morocco. In a few hours from now, that match between Morocco and Senegal will take place. Of course, it's the War of the Lions, China. But best before we look at the War of the Lions, let's look at what happened this weekend, where the Super Eagles were in their 17th podium finish, yes, because they beat their counterparts from Egypt by 4-2 on penalties to win their 9th bronze medal. Wow. No other country in Africa has won as many as 9 bronze medals in the history of the African Cup of Nations. Congratulations to the Super Eagles of Nigeria.
For winning the bronze for the 9th time?
Yes.
I wouldn't join that school of thoughts. I'll just say, for the current AFCON, we thought maybe we could have won it, having reached the semi-final. But by the time you lose the semi-final game, your next target is to at least win the 3rd place. You just talked about 9 bronze medals. That would mean that on at least 9 occasions, go to the semi-final.
Yeah.
Now, add 1980, 1984, 1988, 1990, 1994, 2000, and 2003. That's 7 other years we actually got to the final. So that's on 16 occasions we have reached the stage that Eric Shell got to. Now, on 7 of those 16 occasions, we actually won the semi-final games and got to the final. Out of the 7 times we got to the final, we lost 4 times and won 3. So you see, what Eric Shell has done for himself is that he's not as bad as 3 coaches that gave us 4 performances at the AFCON. In 1982, the worst ever title defense, we are knocked out in the first round. In 2008, under Bertie Boaks, we are knocked out in the quarterfinals. And under Iguavon a few years ago, we are knocked out in the round of 16. Apart from these 3 times, every other time we went to the AFCON, we either go to the semi-final or the final. And every time we go to the semi-final, we won the bronze medal. So, hey, listen, Shell just put the down among the worst 3 coaches. It is the second cadre of coaches. Having said that, yes, you can be happy we won the bronze medal, but I have really nothing to celebrate. We won the bronze medal for keeps over and over again. So then we have really nothing to celebrate about the bronze medal.
Okay, let me just stay with you on this one, China, because you just mentioned it before my getting there about Eric Shell. Victor, I'm sorry, the captain of the Super Eagles of Nigeria, Wilfred Ndidi, has asked that Eric Shell be retained as the head coach of the Super Eagles of Nigeria, after the African Cup of Nations. These employers, the Football Federation, gave him a target of reaching the semi-final for them to review his contract. And now, a lot of people believe that from what we saw in the last Cup of Nations, the quality of football has improved tremendously. We can now see a Super Eagles in an attacking flair like we saw last in 1994 during the Nations Cup victory and of course going to the World Cup as well. People can now say, oh, this is the Super Eagles of Nigeria. They can play what can be described as sexy football. Are you satisfied with the quality of football as originated by Eric Shell, and you think he should be the one to tinker us ahead?
Our elders used to tell us that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Now, Nigerian football has suffered the past 6 years. For the last 4 or the last 3 of the 6 years, Nigeria played haram football. It was so terrible, it was an eyesore to watch. Now, with Bertie Boak's leaving, brought in Pesero, that was not any better in terms of quality of football played. The Kennedy had just 2 games, and he could not beat South Africa and Benin Republic before Eric Shell came in. So it has been 4 years of horror for Nigeria. So Eric Shell comes in, I will not think is a reincarnation of Pep Guardiola. Now, the only reason I'm here saying give Eric Shell a 4-year contract is because the uncertainty in our coaching ranks has affected the team. The high turnover of coaches in Super League have affected the team, and the players often wonder who coaches us for the next game. So when a player like Ndidi or Osimhen cry out and say, let Eric Shell be, because they want consistency in coaching. Now, this high quality of football, I've asked again, what do sports fans really want? High quality of football, or you want to win? Because just at the last AFCON, we got to the final. Just at the last AFCON. And here we are now winning the bronze medal, and we're talking high quality of football. Now, this high quality of football, out of 7 games he played, the high quality of football was basically against Algeria and Tunisia. Against Tanzania, we ended that game with our hearts in our mouth. We all remember. Against Uganda, it was a death rubber game. Against Mozambique, we all understand the quality of opposition. So really, we had that high quality game against Algeria and against Tunisia. The first time at the AFCON, we really faced opposition that mattered. We had 22 shots on goal against us and just 2 shots on goal for us. We had an inept display. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this to bring out Eric Shell. In his time with Nigeria, the results improved. The performance also improved. I agree with that. But let's give him a 4-year contract, because we cannot keep changing coaches every year. The team will benefit from him. He's not the best we have, but we don't want to lose him and start afresh. Eric Shell in charge for another 4 years. At least he has started something with the team. He has built an understanding with the players. He understands how to use the players. So why not? Why would we let him go? Let's give him a 4-year contract. But about him giving up a kind of display of football we have not seen before, I don't agree with that. Nigeria was Nigeria. We played some good football. We have tournament training time. We got a bronze medal, like we have gotten that bronze medal 8 times before. So nothing special with Eric Shell.
Okay, Eric Shell. He needs a
4-year contract.
He needs a new 4-year contract according to China Achiro, and I think I agree with him that we need to have stability in our coaching. At least let's see what will come out of it. And it's not 2, 3, 4 games. You need at least 3 to 4 years, like China has alluded there. Okay, Mike, let's stay away from the coaching aspect now. Let's look at the players on showcase. We've seen the players, from the World Cup qualifiers to the Nations Cup final. Now, will you agree with the attitude of the Nigerian players? A lot of people have talked about the attitude of the Nigerian players, especially with the very lackadaisical build-up to the penalty by Chukwueze. A lot of people believe that the Nigerian players they don't go to war. They are not players who take to war. They consider several other factors and not look at giving their all for the country, no matter whether they are being paid or they are not paid.
Yeah, I think to agree a little bit with some of the propositions from some sections of Nigerian fans. Yes, there are some players within the Super Eagles that whenever they come to national duty, they don't really give their all. Per se, maybe some of them are just trying to be more cautious because if you to national team get injured, going back to your club side is going to be a problem for you to recover. Before you might just recover, there is another man there trying to, of course, take up your place. And if you are not there, the person does well in your wing. Coming back after injury is going to be a long while for you to get back into the first team. This is one thing that some of the players do consider when they come for national team. And that is why you don't see them, taking so call it risk in terms of tackles or advancing forward or whatever. But then there are a few players as well that you can also single out within the team and say yes, whether for club side football or whenever they come to the national team, they give their all. It doesn't matter whether it is a big game or a smaller game in quotes. Players like Victor James Osimhen, Lukman Ademola, these are players that it is evidently clear that whenever they're done on the jersey of the Super Eagles, they give their all. So for me, I tend to agree that there is maybe call it a lack of patriotism on the side of some players whenever they get to the national team.
Okay, China, let me get you on the sort of wrap up on the Nigeria's participation in this year's African Cup of Nations, or is it Nations Cup for 2025? There has been a recurring decimal of money, bonuses being owed the players. And let's look at it from the perspective of the Football Federation. This competition alone, the Super Eagles have earned as much as $4 million US. We know the players are being owed bonuses. Yes, there was the rumor that they are being paid. We know now that their account is yet to be credited. Beyond that, this last year had the highest budget in sports in the history of sports in Nigeria, meaning that finance is not supposed to be an issue going to tournament because we always budget for tournaments. But it looks like nothing has changed. The players still went to the Nations Cup and complained about bonuses being owed between their first 4 games before there was the government perspective. The money will be credited immediately. Players went into play, but information available to me has it that the account is still not being credited as the players return back to their respective club sites, in Europe. You have $4 million US from a tournament like this, like we've often had from other tournaments. But these monies don't seem to be, in my opinion, used in the direction which is supposed to attend to first. We still have debt of infrastructure, facilities are not top-notch and all of that, which I think we'll discuss some other time. But why is this money issue always a problem, especially with the Shehu Diko-led administration where there's been more money voted for sports than ever before?
Listen, I'm not privy to the account of the Sports Commission. I'm also not privy to how money is disbursed to different federations, including the NFF. But one thing we all agree on is that the issue of bonuses have been a recurring decimal in Nigerian sports for as long as we can all remember. I don't know if the last time players went for a tournament and they were paid on time. I don't know when that was, but for a long time we've had this issue. Now we'll have the sports ministry or now the sports commission saying all funds have been disbursed. We also have the NFF saying we've not received the funds, or saying we have paid. The players have not gotten notification yet. We always have this coming. And when just 2 months ago at something as serious and important as the World Cup playoffs. Players go on strike just in November, and a few weeks later, the same thing is happening at the AFCON, the biggest football tournament in Africa. It just shows that some things never change. For me, listen, it is what we are, it is who we are. I remember Betty Books, when Genotro came to Nigeria, he was asked, you're coming to a country that is known for old coaches. And Chad and Niger Republic was old. He's used to being old. And that was the when Genotro was old, Mofo said, not our business. He understands the terrain. Also, when Eric Shell came to Nigeria, he was asked in one of his early press conferences, how are you going to handle being old salaries? What Eric Shell said was, I can handle it. So when he came, we also raised out and said, no, it's not our business. He's used to the terrain. Listen, the players know, the coaches know. This is not a full-time job. Their full-time job is to their clubs. If they feel that, listen, they can't handle being old, but that's what we are. We can't spin it, that's what we are. If they feel they cannot play and be old, they should stay with their clubs and let those who can handle the situation play. I mean, I might sound cold and unreasonable, but it's what it is. It is exactly what it is. It's like a man wanting to relocate to Nigeria and knowing that we don't have life, we don't have food, we don't have water, we don't have security, he now complains. You knew what we are getting into. So, listen, it's a national team. It's not a full-time job. Your full-time job is with your club. Everything is perfect. A contract, medicals, everything is perfect. If you can't handle the jungle that we are at the Nigerian Football Federation, please play for your club and leave us, because that's what we are. Nothing will change in the next 20 years. Nothing whatsoever will change. What's I have to say about this?
Well, but just to wrap up on China, right now, we know that Erichel is like a bride, it was a beautiful bride to a lot of countries. Even Mali that sacked him after the last Nations Cup are now saying, will you come back to us? A lot. Don't you think this could affect maybe his decision leading up to the next football calendar?
Do you understand why the chef took the Nigerian job in spite of us being us owing people? Nigeria is a country that keep your head. We have the kind of talent that if you can get the best use of this talent, you can sell yourself. And Michelle is not a beautiful bride because of what I told the Nigerian national team. Now, listen, if Michelle leaves today, I assure you that in 1 week, we'll have over 100 applications for the job. We look back to Mali. He has said he won't, but again, it depends on what the offer on the table is. If we lose Eric Shell, will our football end? No, it won't. Clemens Vesta won us the AFCON, took us to the World Cup for the first time, and then second round of the World Cup. We lost Clemens Vesta off. But football continues in Nigeria. So football will continue. Yes, we might regret losing him because it means starting afresh. But if he has to go, he has to go. My take is that we should keep Eric Shell. But if he has to go, he has to go. Life and football will continue for us.
Life and football will continue for us. Let's believe that Erisha will stay for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. Now, let's quickly maybe we'll just take a break. When we return for a break, we'll look at the big one coming up in the next few hours, Senegal versus Morocco. What a final. Two of the best football playing countries for Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's Sports Extraordinary Weekend Edition here on Atlantic Television Network. And this weekend is the weekend where the African Cup of Nations 35th edition comes to an end. And two of the best football playing nations in Africa by FIFA ranking is at the final. China, Atlas Lions versus the Teranga Lions. Do I say a good advertisement for African football?
Yes, it is. At least I've watched both teams. And for the Moroccans, they are charged up. They've been building their football for a long time now. And Moroccans feel it's time. It's time to win the AFCON. We have not won the AFCON since 1976. So this is the time. They have some pretty decent players. I mean, we all talk about Hakimi, but he's really not the only decent player in the team. There's also Brahim. They're quite decent players in the team. They have a coach that went to the World Cup semi-final, friends by any African country, but the last World Cup semi-final. So they are really charged up. They have the fans behind them. And maybe if you want to bring up conspiracy theories, they may have the referee behind them too. Just maybe. But for Senegal, we saw Cisse's team win the AFCON 4 years ago. And I watched a lot of that Cisse's team, both at the World Cup and the AFCON. I must tell you that the current Senegal team, they actually play under Papichel, they actually play better football and more effective football. And from the first day I got Senegal at the AFCON, one thing I said was, these guys did not come here to play. And that's true, they're not here to play. So I expect a very interesting final. I expect Senegal not to sit back like Super Eagles against Morocco. I also expect that they will take the game to the Moroccans. And let me tell you one thing. If there's anything that will take home from this game is that it will not be a boring cup final. I don't think it will be a boring cup final.
Well, it wouldn't be a boring cup final. Mike, we've seen 5 clean sheets so far in this tournament with the Moroccan national team. There's been 4 clean sheets with the Senegalese team. What does it mean, especially in a team where both of them have some renowned players, attack-conscious players? We've seen the Moroccan, with 5 goals so far in the tournament, highest so far. Then, of course, there is Sadio Mane, with as many goals.
With that start you just rolled out, what it simply means is that both teams are defensively solid, all right? They concede less goals and they score more goals as well. So if you take a look at the defense line of both teams, they have very incredible defenders and goalkeepers as well. Talk about the Moroccan national team. They have one of the best goalkeeper. Talking about Yassine Bono, one of the renowned goalkeeper even in some years out there in Europe and not just in Africa. Then go for the Senegalese side. You talk about Edouard Mendy, a very experienced goalkeeper that have done it at a big level before moving to the oil money. Was once a Chelsea goalkeeper. Then you talk about their defense line. Kalidou Koulibaly, a renowned name, a no-nonsense defender. You take a look at the Moroccan defense as well, made up of a great individual talent and some big names. The likes of Akraf Hakimi form part of the Moroccan defense. So that is why we've seen both teams conceding less goals and scoring more as well. So I think it's going to be a balanced game. You take a look at the rating alone, it's clear evident to supplement that argument that this indeed is the best game that we are going to see in the African Cup of Nations as a final come calling in just 2 hours at time. First and second team conceding less goals and scoring more, having very brilliant players in their side. So I think it's going to be a massive showdown.
Okay, Chala, he's just talked about brilliant players on the both sides. Can you review, in your opinion, the quality of players on Showcase? Like I mentioned, Morocco is ranked 11 by FIFA. And I think Senegal is 19th. And, on the continent is first and second. The quality of players on Showcase, especially as we approach this final in a few hours.
Well, when you talk about quality of players, that can never be in doubt, the quality of players. And for Senegal, of course, there is Sadio Mane, who we all know from his days in England and Liverpool, was also part of the last Senegal team that won the AFCON. There is Nicolas Jackson, who played for Chelsea until the start of this season and is now on loan at Bayern Munich. Even their goalkeeper, Edouard Mendy, who was once in the books of Chelsea, midfielder Pape Gueye, Idrissa Gueye, Ghana Gueye, there are lots of them. And it's not about just these individual names, it's what they bring together as a team for Senegal. That's what makes them an exciting team. For Morocco, same thing, and I mentioned Brahim Diaz earlier, I mentioned Hakimi earlier, Ashraf Hakimi earlier, then of course there's goalkeeper Bono, who has been mentioned. Again, for the Moroccan team, it's not just about who these names are, it's what they bring together as a team. And don't forget Morocco's coach, he guided Morocco's team, the first and so far only African country to play the World Cup and go all the way to the semi-finals, all the way. It's no mean feat. So when you have two teams like this, that two attacking teams, two fearless teams, you can expect the best of football. I don't see anything sitting back in this one. It's a cup final. It's winner takes all, and they'll go all out to win.
Wow. Let's see. Talking about players still. Let's look at the goalkeepers for these teams. Bono is renowned. He went to the World Cup, and showed his quality. He's still with the team, with the Moroccan national team, China.
Yeah, he's still with the team. He has been in good form ever since the AFCON kicked off. He has some good heights. He has confidence. Listen, any national team that has a Bono between the sticks, we're very confident when the defenders look behind them and see him.
Okay, Mike, he's just talked about Bono there. Bono, let's say it's Sadio Mane versus Bono.
I think it's going to be a very difficult one. Though it's not going to be directly between these two players, because Sadio Mane had to cross, or he has to cross some couple of defenders before firing the ball at the back of the net. So directly it's not going to be Mane and Bono. But then, if shove comes to, if the push comes to shove, rather, I see Sadio Mane getting the better of Yassine Bono. No doubt Yassine Bono is a very, very fine quality goalkeeper. But then Sadio Mane, what we've seen him do with the color of Liverpool, Bayern Munich, down to Al Nassr, he has experience. He was there when they won their first AFCON title in 2021. So with such experience for a player such as Sadio Mane, I think if he has 3 chances against Yassine Bono one-on-one, he's definitely going to score 2.
China, these two countries have never met in the final of the African Cup of Nations. Yes, they have been the football rivalry between them. They've met like 32 times or so. But it has never been at the African Cup of Nations final. If you look at the Senegalese, they have been in the last 4 finals. They have been in 3. And the last time we saw the Moroccan was way back in 2004. Will you say that there's a lot to prove, especially with this team? If you look at the Senegalese, they have always been there. They won in 2021 in one of their 3 final appearances. Do you see them being stopped, by a team that last was in the final in 2004?
See, we must all agree that in the past 4 years can be said to be about the best in African football in the past 4 years. We've seen their club sides do well. We've seen their women national teams do well. We've seen their junior national teams do well. And we have seen the national teams also do well. Both have been not get to the final before. And even the Senegal was in the final 4 years ago and actually won it. And Morocco has not been in the final since over 10 years, almost 20 years now. But in the past 4 years of football, Morocco and Senegal are clearly the most outstanding teams in Africa right now. And both of them being in the final. Just show, I think for the first time, we have 2 finalists that we can say they fully deserve to be in the final.
Well, deserving finalists, a lot of people believe that Morocco and Senegal deserve to be in the final of the African Cup of Nations. Now, let's look at one critical factor that has been on showcase in the course of this tournament, and that has been China, the 12th player, the spectators, the fans. We've seen nearly 70,000 of them inside of that Mohammed V Stadium in Morocco. And we believe most of them will be rooting for the Atlas Lions of Morocco. The Senegalese have already complained that they don't have a required number of tickets for their fans who are very ready to enter into the stadium for that match. But the Moroccan authorities have come out to say, according to the CAF rules, you are entitled to 5%, which we have given to you already. What role will the fans play in this final today?
The fans will have a role to play, but if those are the CAF rules, I think it's wrong. Because this is not like a home and away fixture. In a home and away game, the away team is entitled to 5% of tickets. That's normally club football or even in international football. But this is a tournament. And most times in a tournament like this 30% of tickets should go to one team, 30% go to the other team, then the remaining 40% should be sold to the public, and for those that can't, are going to be given complimentary tickets. So I would have expected that the Senegalese will have 30% of tickets that will be sold today. But if they are saying CAF, saying their rules is 5%, it means that they are looking at Morocco as the home team and Senegal as the away team, which will not be the case. This is tournament football, this is a cup final, and it shouldn't be that way.
Okay, Mike, what do you make of China's opinion there? He said he shouldn't be that way. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, definitely it shouldn't be, because this is a continental title. It's not a club football where you say, okay, because you're a home team, therefore you have little advantage in terms of the percentage ratio of tickets sold out there. I don't think this should be the case. Secondly, I think Senegal, their authority, have also raised a very critical concern about the way and manner tickets are being, denied to some of their supporters. This is what it is. When you go out there to purchase a ticket, if you are not a Moroccan fan, if the ticket was to be sold for 10 naira, they will now increase it to 20, double the price, just because they want to scare you away from getting the ticket. These gimmicks and strategy, for me, I think it is not good, and I think that CAF should look into that area, because it's a genuine concern that the Senegalese are raising, and I think for me it will be very. You saw the game against the Super Eagles. Almost the whole fans were seen in that game, and I think for me, advantage for any team playing against the whole nation.
Wow, China. Now let's wrap up on the African Cup of Nations final. Where do you think it will go later today? Will it be the Moroccans smiling with their first in 50 years, or it will be the Senegalese, their first in 4 years?
Listen, can go direction. And one thing I know is that, like I said earlier, Senegal will not sit back like Nigeria in semi-final. Senegal will come out to play. They didn't come out to joke. It can go in direction. The Moroccans are well charged up. For Senegal, yes, they want to win it again. Even though the odds slightly favor Morocco, but I think this one can go in the direction.
Mike?
I think it's going to be a whole lot of things is involved out here. First off, these two countries, they've just won the African Cup of Nations Cup title one time apiece, 476, and they did that during the era of round-robin format. It wasn't one-legged final, all right? How many years? Over 50-something years down the line. The next time they got to the final was 2004, and this their present coach was in that squad. He played in the final, talking about the Moroccan coach. Then leading them as a player to the final, losing that very one. 22 years after the final, he's now taking them to the final as a coach. So that also the coach might want to prove his onions here. Hence, I lost that final as a player. This time as a coach, I will win it. And then don't also forget there is a heavy financial incentives that come with it. The prize money for this year's edition, Naira equivalent, we are talking about the sum of 14 point something billion naira, which is massive. Then for Senegal, they got to the final in 2021. 4 years after, they are going to the final again. And they have a couple of players that played in that squad, meaning that experience is going to be key here. So I think it's a 50-50 game.
It's top